Hey cuties, what's up? We're back with some more reactions after dark, and of course, we are going to be watching A Dog May Have Been the Key to Solving This Murder, obviously by Dark Asia with Megan. I mean, that is obviously a weird title for a video, right? Well, it's not weird, that weird, but I feel like it's weird. It's worded in a way where this is going to be classic Dark Asia, where the person's going to get away, right? Because it's kind of worded in a way that maybe, like you're saying, like, oh, a dog could have been the key to solving this, but it wasn't, right? If they had only done something, then they could have figured out who done it. Or maybe it's just the fact that it is a dog that they're unable to try to figure out who had done it, because, you know, how are you going to get information out of a dog? Question mark. Who knows, right? Yeah, obviously we're continuing on with Dark Asia week. We do not have drama for today or anything to talk about for the QT. Of course, again, I'm just waiting for a good Stephanie video to come out so we can talk about any like crazy tea. Though I might go react to the wedding confessions that she has done. I never reacted to those on the Stephanie channel because someone had suggested that. So maybe I'll end up doing that next week if Stephanie doesn't post the final part to the reality show that she's currently been watching. Yep. We are just going to get into it, I think. There's an ad for this one too. Try free cash. I don't like the way that sounds, free cash. That sounds like a scam, but we'll see. Also, I'm barely looking at Prime Day, right? If anyone doesn't know, Prime Day has been going on from the 23rd until tomorrow, until the end of tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be Friday. So if you want anything, just go look over there and see if there's anything cheap there. I mean, I'm not sponsored. I have nothing there. I just happen to know that it's Prime Week, arguably not Prime Day, Prime Week, even though they call it Prime Day, right? Yep, we are just gonna get into it.
In the early hours of July 8th, 2004, torrential rain was falling in Seoul. The loud thuds of heavy raindrops were all that could be heard. It was the kind of weather that makes you want to stay inside, but for two people, it would have been better if they hadn't. It was in these early hours of the morning, two people were brutally murdered in an apartment on the third floor of a multi-unit residential building in the Yongdapdong neighborhood, Songdong District, Seoul, South Korea. One was a woman in her 30s, the other was a little girl who had just turned 12. The homeowners had stepped out for a while. In their absence, both victims were stabbed to death.
Is the 12-year-old related to the woman? Oh, whoops. I forgot to turn that off. Good thing I looked over there. And to see that I forgot to remove the QT. It was only like, what, 30 seconds, right? You could live with that.
Where they lay in bed. At first glance, the scene looked as though someone had simply descended on them while they slept, and yet the front door was completely intact. There was no sign of forced entry from the outside. So who had come into that apartment that night, and why did they want to take two lives in such a horrific way? These are the questions that 22 years later, the victims' families are still searching for answers to.
Okay, so that's what I assumed from the way the sentence is worded. It's not worded like, oh, a dog was the deciding factor in catching this person. No, it's like the only person who knows who did it is the dog, and there's no way to coax that information out of a dog, right? They can't talk, right? So, again, standard Dark Asia, like we don't know who's going to end up doing this, or they're still on trial, or they got away with it, etc., etc.
This is the story of the 2004 Yongdapdong neighborhood murders, one of South Korea's most confusing cold cases. Most of us spend a fair amount of time.
Okay, so here's the ad clearly, because we transitioned. So again, this is free cash. Here's a like shortened link, so I don't know what the actual link is. Free cash, the high-paying rewards app. So it's a reward app. Again, I don't trust anything like this, right? And Honey's not the same thing, but it wasn't Honey like a scam or something. I don't remember what was wrong with Honey, but apparently it was bad, right?
Because these things usually promise more than they deliver, but I figured there was no harm in testing it. So I actually tried it, and it's really simple. You pick a game or task.
Oh, here we go. This is what we're looking for. I'll pick a game or a task. Okay. Sure. Eligible countries for this offer are these listed below. Link in description for 10 bonus dollars. There's the QR code. I'm kind of in the way. There you go. But of course, that kind of stuff just too good to be true. Though I did use stuff like this like a decade ago. Like, swag bucks was a thing from a long time ago, which I did end up getting some chump change here and there from it, right? Though there was like, if you were there long enough, like early enough, I should say, they had a kind of a glitch where you could just have videos, I think, running in the background or something, and it just like caching in for you, so you could automate it without actually having to just stare at these things or whatnot, right? Because I mean, these things are like, okay, you have to watch a video, you have to watch an ad, you have to do this, you have to do that, right? Which with Swagbucks, we're talking like 10, 15 years ago, like a long time ago. You could just have it running in the background and just gaining that money. Though I think they were starting to ban people for that. I don't remember. But yeah, anything like this is like, sure, try at your own discretion.
For your first offer, and it's entirely free. It's a practical way to make your downtime count for a little more, so why not? Enjoy. No one knows exactly what happened inside that apartment. When the homeowners came back, all they found were the two bodies. Hagunhee was discovered first, in the spare room. Uni was a close acquaintance of the family who was living with them at the time. She was believed to have fallen asleep watching television in that room earlier that night. She never woke up. Her body had 18 stab wounds. The deepest and most fatal was a wound directly to the heart.
Yeah, it's number 4.
Her hands showed unmistakable defensive wounds, evidence that she had woken up at some point and tried to shield herself. But there was no stopping such a frantic attack. Forensic specialists concluded that Uni had been asleep when the first blow came. She was lying in bed when she was stabbed. She came to for a moment, flailing her arms trying to protect herself, and that's what left the marks on her hands. But it wasn't enough. What they found in the main bedroom was even harder to look at. The couple's only daughter, Yeonu, a 12-year-old girl, lying in her bed, dead. She too appeared to have been attacked in her sleep. Yeonu had no defensive wounds at all. There were stab marks in the blanket, in the exact position where she had been lying. The blade had come while she was asleep, exactly as she lay. She left this world without ever knowing what was happening to her. The cause of death was a stab wound to the neck. The cut was so precise and so devastating that even the forensic examiners were shaken. One clean cut to the throat of a child. That was not the work of someone swinging a knife in a blind rage. The forensic team took particular note of this. In some ways, Yeonu's injuries were even more disturbing than Uni's. The wound had the quality of something deliberate and practiced, not a wound inflicted through an act of panic, not an act of anger, but something almost ritualistic.
Are we actually saying ritualistic, or are we just using that word, right? So assuming, okay, so is this a carotid artery situation? Is that what the first strike was, or what?
Far beyond what would have been needed to silence her. So there was intention here. There was meaning in it. The police launched their investigation. First, they assessed the scene. The front door showed no signs of being forced. No damage to the lock, no damage to the frame.
Okay, how does someone get in with two people sleeping? Are we saying the door was accidentally left open, or?
Everything intact and properly latched. So how had someone gotten in, and how had they gotten out?
Are we saying that it was actually the couple that had left, right? Because how could they have gotten in with two people sleeping? You'd assume everything is locked, unless everything wasn't locked. Unless it was the couple who showed up, did this for some reason, and then left pretending that they were still out doing whatever they were doing, and then came back to do whatever, right? Though, like, I'm getting to this point because I'm saying if this relies on a dog, well then, if there was a dog watching this or knowing, the dog would not have, like, made a fuss or have attacked the owners if the owners had come home, did this act of cruelty, and then left, right? Because the dog's like, oh, it's just my owners. Nothing wrong there. And just went about its day, right? That would make sense, but then it just, you have to have, like, what's the motive for the parents to do this to daughter and the babysitter? I don't know who the other woman is related to these two. That's what I'm not aware of. Question mark.
They swept every inch of the building inside and out, and then they find a critical clue as to how the killer got in. On the roof
Okay.
of the second floor veranda, located directly below the crime scene on the third floor, they discovered footprints, 5 of them. The killer had come in from the rooftop of an adjacent building. They had
Okay, so that's it. So it's not the couple then.
crossed from that roof onto the roof of the second floor veranda, walked across it, and climbed in through a third floor balcony window that had been left open. It was a dangerous approach. Each footprint told its own story. When investigators compared the faint footprints found inside the apartment to those on the veranda roof, they matched perfectly. The same size, the same tread pattern, one pair of shoes. That also confirmed they were looking for a single perpetrator acting alone. The shoes were a Korean size 280, equivalent to a US men's size 10, a shoe size that was well above the average for Korean men at the time. The specific type of sneakers were also identified as a style that had been manufactured about 6 years before the crime and sold at Dongdaemun Market. And that was a significant lead. Now all they had to do was find the person who had been wearing those shoes. As the investigation progressed, one name kept surfacing: Oh Chang-sik, Eunhee's ex-boyfriend. He had visited the third floor apartment on at least 2 occasions while the two were dating.
Okay, I mean that would make sense if she was the woman who was killed here, so it would make sense. Again, the closest person is usually the most likely suspect, or most likely to have been the one who have done it.
He knew the place. And of course that's not much on its own, but there was something else. Chang-sik had multiple prior convictions for burglary. It
Okay, it's in his MO.
wasn't just something he'd done once or twice. It was a pattern of behavior. He was a man who knew how to get into homes he wasn't invited into.
Yeah, again, he has an MO for burglary, right? He has reason for being her ex, meaning he probably is angry at her for them not being together anymore. There's almost motive. He has a way to get in to do the thing that he did, so cut and dry, other than actually, linking him specifically to being the one who had done it. Like, he has a reason to be the one who had done it, but basically I need more evidence than that, right? It's like, oh yeah, he's a burglar and he's her ex. Like, you need more than that, unfortunately.
The police named him as their primary suspect. Their theory went like this. Chang-sik had entered the apartment intending to kill Eunhee. And when he realized that 12-year-old Yeonu, a girl who knew his face, was there too, he killed her to eliminate her.
Sure.
And Chang-sik's behavior on the day of the crime was also deeply suspicious. That same afternoon, after the murders, he had been seen wearing brand new sneakers, and he had abandoned his motorcycle in a neighborhood across Seoul.
I mean, hello? He's a thief. He has a motive because he's her ex, right? So maybe he's holding a grudge. He got rid of his sneakers. Or not necessarily got rid of them, but he's wearing brand new shoes. Ditched his bike on the same day.
A motorcycle with no license plate. Why get rid of such a precious commodity? Why switch to new shoes? Something seemed off. A friend of Chang-sik's gave a statement as well. This friend had seen Chang-sik on the day of the murders. According to the friend, Chang-sik had told him that he'd disposed of his motorcycle, announced he was about to leave for China, and asked the friend to transport some belongings in his car over to Chang-sik's mother's house.
Trying to run away to China, on top of all the other stuff.
He looked exactly like a man preparing to run.
Yep.
The police arrested Chang-sik, and under questioning, he confessed. He even participated in a crime scene reconstruction. An investigator who worked on the case would later say that information Chang-sik provided corroborated witness testimony.
Okay, did he just lie then? Is everything just pointing in his direction, but he didn't actually do it? Because, why do we have, 5 things of evidence here? Not necessarily evidence, but, clues. We have 5 clues here. And a 6th of him just outright confessing, and he wasn't the one? Question mark?
And included details that only the killer would know. The case finally looked like it was going well. Then it all fell apart in
How? How does it fall apart? History of burglary. X, grudgeful X, threw away his shoes on the same day, threw away his bicycle on the same day, told his friend he was running away to China, confessed to the crime.
The moment Chang-sik stood before a judge, he took back every word of his confession.
I was going to say he was coerced into confessing now.
He said he had been coerced.
Literally. That's what I said, he's been coerced into it.
Chang-sik acknowledged that his behavior that day had looked suspicious, but he had his own explanation. He said he'd learned of Eunhee's death from a police officer who came to his mother's house, and the shock of that news had caused him to act erratically. The court stated that the prosecution's evidence lacked evidentiary validity. The investigation hadn't uncovered what it needed to pull the case together. And so, Oh Chang-sik was acquitted.
I'm assuming that that only happened. So he did it. Let's just outright say he did it. But because now he has a lawyer, the lawyer's like, hey, I'm looking at all the evidence they have on you. The only reason you will go to jail is because you confessed, right? So all you have to do is tell them that you were coerced into confession and that you didn't do it, and you'll get scot-free. Instantly, that's what happened, right? Because again, all that other evidence doesn't allow them to arrest you because it's not concrete. But the confession is a 100%. We got you, slam dunk. But if you revoke that 100%, all the other stuff isn't good enough to arrest you. So clearly, he got a lawyer. The lawyer's like, hey, I don't care. I mean, that's their job, right? They don't care if you've done the bad thing. I feel like sometimes, though, maybe if you've done something really bad, the lawyer's like, okay, you're Satan himself. I can't. I'm out, right? I don't know how often that happens, but it's your job to get criminals off sometimes, right? Sometimes they're supposed to protect the innocent people, but then also at the other end, they're supposed to also protect criminals. So in this case, it's the protecting, right? Because that's how I'm seeing it. Because I already understood that all that stuff is just, I don't know if it's circumstantial, if that's the proper term for any of that. But it's just the confession was a slam dunk, and if you revoke that, then they can't arrest you, or they have no foundation, really.
But as time passed, experts began raising serious doubts about whether Chang-sik had ever been the real killer.
Really?
When they compared the facts to elements of the crime scene, too much didn't fit.
Are you serious?
For one. Based on the size 280 shoe print, specialists estimated the killer's height, standard proportional.
Why? Because of how much weight he is applying to the ground has to do with how much his weight would be, or what?
Population. A person wearing that size shoe would have feet that were around 266 millimeters long. This would suggest the killer's height to be roughly 179 centimeters, about 5 feet 10 inches tall. Well, Chang-sik was more than 11 centimeters shorter than that. Shoe size and height obviously don't correspond perfectly, but an 11 centimeter gap puts him well outside the typical range for someone wearing 280 shoes.
Yeah, but you're making the assumption that that's flimsy, in my opinion. Like, oh yeah, he has a size X shoe, so he has to be this height. That's not how that works, right? Your feet can be bigger or smaller. It's just, sure, maybe the average for your shoe size are going to be this for a person of this height, but again, you could have like gigantic feet and be like 5 feet. So I feel like that's flimsy.
Other doubts followed. If Chang-sik had gone to that apartment planning to kill Eunhee, he would have needed at least some preparation. Time spent watching the place, timing his entry, learning when no one else would be home. But Yeonwoo was there that night, and Chang-sik had visited that apartment while dating Eunhee. He knew who lived there. The idea that he walked in completely blind without any reconnaissance was hard to accept. The expert's conclusion was,
why are we just assuming that he walked in with no preparation time? Right? We're just assuming he had no prep time. Why are we assuming that?
Clear. Too many things didn't add up for Chang-sik to be the killer. Which,
again, the first ruling, too flimsy. That's stupid. This one, again, why were you assuming he didn't prep?
which meant the real perpetrator was still out there somewhere.
Nah.
Someone around 179 centimeters tall, wearing size 280 shoes, capable of scaling buildings in the dark and wielding a knife with terrifying precision. Who could fit that description? With the investigation stalled, another person came under suspicion, a man who lived in the building just behind the crime scene. He said he had heard someone rushing down the stairs right after the killings, and had come outside to look. At first, he was just a witness. Then, gradually, he became a suspect. His account was specific. He said he'd seen a motorcycle, dark-colored, ridden by someone in a dark raincoat, which happened to match the description of the motorcycle Oh Chang-sik would dispose of later that day. So, at first, it seemed like pure coincidence. But as police looked more closely at this man, things started to feel off.
A guy, okay, I guess he has wounds. Guy specifically gives you the motorcycle that you thought the other bad guy was, and you're like, hey, maybe it's this guy who said it was this specific motorcycle of the other guy. Maybe it's actually this dude. I don't know, that just makes it more seem like it's the original boyfriend's doing, right? If a guy said, hey, I heard running and I saw this specific motorcycle, which is the motorcycle of the guy you thought it was, like, come on.
The first thing that raised flags was that he had visible scratch marks on his body.
Sure. That is suspicious.
Fresh-looking marks, right around the time of the crime. The kind of marks you might get if you'd caught yourself on something. And
is it fresh? Or, like, what's his occupation? Does he have a cat? Since if you're a cat, you're gonna look like that all the time, right? Cat owners are just covered in mutilations.
then, investigators found something even more alarming. His shoe size,
I should have said lacerations,
was also 280.
Wow.
Perfect match to the footprint at the scene. And when police tested his rooftop room with luminol...
That was a sarcastic wow, by the way. We got luminol for this one, which is going to illuminate the blood stains.
They got a positive reaction for blood.
But whose blood does it belong to?
Every indicator pointed in his direction. He lived in a building with direct rooftop access to the exact approach route the killer had used.
Sure.
Every single suspicion turned out to be wrong. The scratches, he explained them as marks from the broken iron handle on the door of his rooftop bathroom. Nothing to do with the crime. The blood, a false positive. And a size 280 shoe, while above average, wasn't rare enough in South Korea to be treated as damning evidence.
Yeah, I was like any of that's like, okay, sure. Like, none of that really matters. Again, could have just even blamed it on the cat if he had a cat, but I'm guessing he didn't have a cat.
The man in the building was cleared. Years passed.
So if he was cleared, like, hello, he said he saw a person, well, he didn't see, he did see, he said a person in a dark raincoat who had a motorcycle that's the exact match of the original guy. And you're like, oh, original guy didn't do it. Like, come on. Like, can we go over the list again? What was it? What was the first one, other than him being the X? The X, I think I was saying, was like a second. He has skill as a burglar. He's potentially a grudgeful X. He changed his shoes the same day. He threw away his motorcycle the same day. He told his friend he was running away. He confessed to the murder. And a man saw a guy with a dark raincoat with the exact same motorcycle that the original guy had. So it's like, hello?
And then something else came to light. It was 2012. A man serving life...
2012? This is almost, what, 20 years later? Maybe? Or was it 2000 something? So it's not quite 10 years, actually. I thought it was like 19 something, but I think it was 2000 something, so not quite 10 years yet, like 8 years or something.
Sentence drew a picture while in prison. In the drawing, 2 women, a dog, a fence, the interior of the Yongdapdong neighborhood crime scene. The prisoner's name was Lee Byung-ju. Lee claimed he knew about the Yongdapdong case. He told prosecutors he had heard about it from a co-conspirator of his. He spoke as though he had information about the real killer. Investigators went to talk to him immediately, but there was a glaring inconsistency.
What, is he just saying that to try to get less time? He's like, hey, I'll mix some stuff up so that I can get less time in prison.
In his account. In his conversations with prosecutors, Lee referred to the 2 victims as mother and daughter, as though Pagani were Yeonu's mother. But that was simply wrong. Pagani was a family friend, not Yeonu's mother. The 2 had no familiar relationship whatsoever. If Lee had genuinely received detailed information from someone close to the crime, there was no way he would have gotten that basic fact so wrong.
I mean, if you were the one doing it, you would assume that it was the mom and child, right? There's at least that.
Byung-ju also had written notes.
You know, devil's advocate for that one, right, is, again, if you're the one doing it, or if you're the person who had done it and you told this guy, but you had no relation to the people there, you had no information, you know, it's just something you did because you wanted to do it, right, because you're a psychopath, you would have just assumed this is a mom and a daughter that you're doing this to, not random woman and a child who does live there.
They looked almost like a personal code, things jotted down so he wouldn't forget what he'd heard. But even those notes contained inaccuracies that didn't match the known details of the case. The conclusion was straightforward. Lee Byung-ju hadn't committed the Yongdapdong murders. He hadn't even spoken directly with anyone who had. He picked up fragments through the prison grapevine and inflated them into something that sounded like insider knowledge. On top of everything else, Byung-ju was 160 centimeters tall. The estimated height of the Yongdapdong killer was 179 centimeters.
Again, like, you can't be using that as a foundation, in my opinion. I'm not some sort of crazy PhD scientist or anything, but I feel like you can't just be like, okay, this person has this size feet, so he has to be this tall. You can't just assume that. You can't just assume he's that tall just because of his footprints, right? The person could be really short with big feet. They could be really tall but with small feet. It's unlikely, but you still can't be like, okay, they're definitely 179, and we can't suspect anyone else. Like, come on.
A 19-centimeter gap. He wasn't the man. Another theory had fallen through.
19
His
centimeters.
appearance had introduced one new possibility. If he had heard something in a prison, even a distorted version of the story, then it could mean the real killer might be behind bars for something else. And whoever told Pyong the story might be a person worth finding. The investigation took on a new direction. What investigators turned their focus to?
I was seeing how many 19 centimeters was, and it's like almost. Is it actually more than 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's a little over 6 inches. Question mark. Which sure, that's a lot. I was assuming it wasn't going to be a lot, but still, you can't just assume that.
Next was a member of the household I haven't mentioned yet. Gami.
The dog, yeah.
Was the family's dog, present in the apartment the night of the murders. Gami was the sole witness, but she hadn't been left alive. However, what Gami left behind turned out to be a meaningful clue.
Wait. So, another victim, right? So the dog was eliminated as well? I wasn't expecting that. That seems like, why? Right? Why did you do that, of all things? I guess because they didn't want anything to be left behind, right? Are they going to say this dog bit the attacker, and then thus they have, like, blood in the dog's teeth from what had happened?
Along the walls of the spare room, the room where Pagani was killed, investigators found traces of Gami's movements forming an L shape around the perimeter. These were the marks of repeated movement, frantic, desperate movement. An animal trying to escape from something.
Okay, so that at least tells you that this is a person who the dog doesn't know, or it feels as a threat.
Specialists study the patterns. Dogs, when frightened, instinctively seek out enclosed spaces, the narrow gap between furniture and a wall, under a bed, behind a wardrobe. They press themselves into dark, tight spaces as a survival response. Gami had apparently hidden behind the bed where Pagani lay, and the killer had gone after her. Evidence throughout the room showed the bed had been moved multiple times.
This is a reenactment of the crime, by the way. This is a reenactment.
Pushed from different directions, shifted again and again as someone reached underneath trying to get at the dog. This wasn't one quick attempt to catch the dog. The killer had spent real time on this. Experts treated this as one of the most significant elements of the entire crime. 2 people had just been killed, and this person, instead of leaving, was spending time trying to catch a small dog.
Yeah, I feel like you're putting this much effort into a dog, you're going to leave some sort of evidence behind, but I guess they just couldn't find anything despite this man running around this room for who knows how long trying to catch this dog.
And it was unusual behavior, and it raised another critical question. In trying to catch a terrified animal, the killer had almost certainly made contact with Gami at some point.
Yes, sure. Or the room itself, right?
A frightened dog doesn't go quietly. It kicks, scratches, bites, and claws with everything it has. The killer had very likely been scratched or bitten by Gami, which meant Gami may have had something on her. Skin cells, hair, biological traces that could be tied to a specific person. No DNA from the killer had been found on either victim, but Gami was different. According to expert analysis, it was estimated that Gami had been in direct contact with the killer for around 20 minutes. Under her nails, in her mouth, there could have been something there. But at the time, no one thought to run a DNA analysis on the dog.
Really? I feel like they're slacking, right? So this is South Korea, and this was early 20s. Also, this is murder. I don't remember if it's supposed to be South Korea. I think people have said that South Korea doesn't necessarily tries as hard enough, but it takes drugs more seriously than murder and assault, ? So I don't know if that's why they didn't check the dog, or why they allowed this guy to get away at the beginning off of the slam dunk of a confession that he had. Assuming he was the guy. Maybe he wasn't. He really wasn't, but there's so many things adding, like there's 7 things pointing at him. The 6th being like his confession, right? That was the 6th thing that was mentioned. Him just outright saying he did it, right? And of course, if you get a lawyer's going to tell you, hey, revoke that, because all the other information they have is circumstantial, I guess, is probably what would have been said.
More potentially decisive evidence gone. From the scene as a whole, investigators and profilers began assembling a picture of who this person was.
Oh, they don't have the dog anymore, obviously, so they can't get the DNA.
First, it was likely someone familiar with the building. The rooftop approach to that third floor balcony was not something you'd stumble onto by accident. You'd have to go there, look around, and work it out in person. This was someone who had been to the scene before. Second, someone with military training. The wound to Yanu's neck, precise, intentional, devastating, was not the kind of thing a person achieves by accident.
Does South Korea not have mandatory military though? A lot of places do. I don't know if South Korea is one of those places. I thought it was, right? So I feel like that's not really. I think that's me assuming that you have mandatory 3 years in South Korea. Because if everyone has mandatory 3 years, that means everybody is a suspect. So you can't use that. But again, it might not be the case there.
That's the kind of incapacitation technique taught to people who are trained to kill. It pointed to someone from a military background or someone with professional experience handling bladed weapons. Third, someone carrying deep, concentrated rage. Stabbing one victim 18 times, a ritualistic, near ceremonial cut to a child's throat. This wasn't the appearance of a robbery gone wrong. This was a targeted act of violence, an expression of anger, or something even darker. Profilers had one more concern. A person capable of something like this almost never stops at one murder. The Yongdap-dong killer, they believed, had almost certainly committed other crimes.
Sure, do we have any more evidence of that though? Is there anything similar or no?
Which meant there was a real possibility the killer had since been caught and was already in prison,
Sure.
serving time for something else. And there was one more theory that kept coming up. It was possibly a contract killing. Someone had hired this person to get rid of Pakuni. The level of preparation, the precision, the absence of obvious motive connecting the killer to the victims personally, it all fit the profile of someone who was paid to do it.
I don't know, sure. Also, what is this, like, B-roll? Here we have, like, Bulbasaur / Ivysaur. I don't know which one it is at this angle, but like, Bulbasaur over here, a Pokemon in this shot.
If that was true, the person who ordered it was still out there, completely free. But none of these theories led anywhere concrete. Oh Chang-shik walked free, the man living next door was eliminated from suspicion. The prisoner's story fell apart. 5 footprints, size 280 shoes, an estimated height of 179 centimeters. A handful of fragments of evidence, and then nothing. The real killer had disappeared into the darkness completely. The shadow that climbed through that open balcony window in the early hours of that July morning had never come back into the light. It has been around 22 years since the murders. The case remains unsolved. The family that lost Pagani, the parents who lost 12-year-old Yeonu, they are still living without answers, without even knowing who walked into their home that night or why. To lose the people you love most in such a brutal way, and then to spend 2 decades not knowing the first thing about why it happened or who did it, there is no greater anguish than that. But there is one minor hope.
How?
South Korea abolished the statute of limitations for...
Oh yeah, okay. What else got rid of the statue? Was it India? Is that the place, or was it like, what was the one we watched where the guy waited? He rented the place for forever. I don't know if that was Korea or if that was India or somewhere else, right? Where they also got rid of the statute of limitations on murder.
For murder in 2015, which means there is no timer ticking down on this case.
Because it's the same place. Well, then it's like, okay, well, thanks to that guy who went out of his way to make sure that happened, and now we have that for this case. But I don't know if this is the same place or not.
Wherever the killer is, whatever they're doing, however many years passed, they will never be safe. As long as they're alive, prosecution remains possible. Somewhere out there, someone knows what happened that night. If the profilers are right, the killer may already be sitting in a prison cell or something else.
Sure.
Or they may have told someone, at some point, a fragment of a story that escaped. A single new lead, even a small one, could reopen everything. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.
That is going to be it for today, though. Is there something at the end of this? Because there's a little extra. I think she's going to come back in.
And if you haven't yet, my free cash link is below with the $10 bonus.
Yeah, there's the QR code again for free cash again. Your discretion is advised on that one. But yep, that is going to be it for today. And I'm fully on board of the first guy. Like, not to go over it again, but we're going to go over it again if I can remember everything. What was the first thing? Like, I have to, like, get started. Like, once I get started, I'll remember everything. But first thing, before him just being an he's a burglar, right? History of burglary. Potentially a grudgeful acts. Threw his shoes away. well, not necessarily threw them away, but got new shoes the same day, threw away his bike the same day, told his friend he's running away. He confessed to doing it. A witness said he saw someone wearing or using the exact same bike that belongs to this guy. Like 7 different things, right? And it's like, he can get away and we can't do anything. I mean, it's just all, like, they really needed that confession. And a lawyer coming in and say, hey, revoke your confession, and they can't do anything to you, really screwed everything over, right? I'm telling you that's what happened, right? A lawyer got in and it was like, hey, as long as you do this, you'll get off scot-free. Doesn't matter if you did it or not, because again, that's their job, unfortunately. Yeah, that's just my opinion on what happened with this case. I'm telling that's what it is, right? It just makes sense, logically speaking. Question mark. Yeah, cuties. That's gonna be it. So yeah, thanks for watching. Remember to buy my stickers. If think about becoming a member, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, so we can watch time and subscribers. And don't forget we have a throne now as well. And shout out to the members, EmmyStarr, RaleyDrew, and alexgkiller 880. Yeah, cuties. Thanks for watching. Tune into the next episode. Like, subscribe, hype, and comment. Further ado. See ya.